everyone, and welcome. I am so incredibly excited about today's presentation. As you probably know, this is our inaugural session for our new iThrive platform, which is presented by Edge Pro, iDoc, and iCare Pro. Today's webinar is going to be an amazing kickoff. Just a little bit about iThrive. It's a collaborative effort to provide eye care professionals with practical business solutions. Today's session is sponsored by ClearVision Optical, and I'd like to personally thank ClearVision and their team for all of their support. As we're getting started, let me just remind everyone that your microphones are muted so that we can hear our speaker clearly. If you have any comments or questions for David as he's moving through his presentation, feel free to drop them into the chat at the bottom of your screen, and we'll make sure we get to all of your questions. Our session over the course of the next several days is going to be about practice culture and team building. Our topic today is staffing a winning practice and creating a culture of success. All right. When I think about the two key elements that guide a successful practice, I think about staffing and I think about culture. And for those of you that are out there today, you're making an investment in your practice and staff just by attending this course. This course is going to guide you to choosing the right employees for your team. It's going to create a positive culture that reflects the core values of your practice. And in doing these things, you're going to see an increase in your productivity, improved customer service, and ultimately an increase in your revenue. Our featured speaker today is David Friedfeld. David is the president of ClearVision Optical. In addition to being innovative and embracing the technological advancements within our industry, David also has the responsibility of ensuring that the needs of his clients are met. And at ClearVision, it begins with the people that connect with these clients on a day-to-day basis. If you ever have the opportunity to visit ClearVision, do it. Your experience will be just as unique and distinctive as the brands that they provide eye care professionals today. Without further ado, David.
Okay, I've got the magic wand, so I should be able to advance. Let's test. Yes. Okay.
Got it.
Thank you, Yvonne. For everyone out there in television land, I'm Dave Friedfeld, president of ClearVision Optical. For the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to run through a lot of information about culture and staffing. And our belief here at ClearVision Optical, and our belief generally, is that when you hire right, everything else happens. So that's number one. Number two, my goal for everyone is for us to take away one or two nuggets. And the best thing that you can do in that case is to take notes. Now, I know that a lot of you are on your lunch hour, and some of you are against taking notes. It's not a test. But if you think of something that makes sense in your practice, jot it down. And the reason I'm saying that is because only you will know what you're jotting down, and only you will work on your practice. So whether you're the practice owner, whether you're the practice manager, whether you're a newly hired optician, this has relevance for everybody in the practice. That's number one. Number two, again, I want to reiterate what Yvonne said. So by giving us a little bit of time during your busy day, you're making an investment in yourselves and in your practice. And at ClearVision Optical, what we like to say is about 5%, roughly 5% of the individual employee's time on a weekly basis is dedicated to improving that employee, career development, mission inside the organization. So in other words, out of a 40-hour week, we're going to be taking 2 hours every week to make that employee better, and so that employee feels more part of the team. And that's what we're doing today. So we're taking 1 hour out of your busy week to make sure that whatever we talk about today is going to be impactful for you. And at the end, I also want to make sure that there's a dollar and cents benefit to your practice. The best thing you can do for me, Yvonne, and the other sponsors today is to tell us how you implemented some of these ideas. So without further ado, thanks a bunch. And one more thing I should say. This is participatory. It's going to be very interesting how we do this. But when you want to ask a question, or you want to make a suggestion, or you want to give an answer, just put it down in the chat box below, right on the screen. Yvonne's going to be our co-host, and she'll talk for you. And one other thing, At the end, we're going to give a prize for those people, maybe a couple of prizes from ClearVision for the live version here, only live version, for playing the game. So the more you play, the more Yvonne's going to see your name, and she might say, oh, you know what it is? It's Dr. Carney out in Iowa that really participated a lot today, and we're going to give him a prize. And David, tell us what that prize is. I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. Okay, so first slide up is what challenges do we face in building a great culture and hiring our staff? So right now, if you want to put in the chat box anything that you've had problems with, our goal is to cover that during the day. So it might be a hiring issue, it might be a communication issue, it might be that you lack engagement in the organization, any kind of uncertainty with personnel or making those decisions, how to exit employees, how to interview, what is it that you're dealing with in your practice? If you have anything right now, just put it in the chat box. If you don't want to play, that's fine. That's fine. But ideally, right now, Yvonne, has anyone started to play yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So
okay, so what do we got? Tell us what a couple of challenges are.
Yeah, so Mark, in his practice, negative employees, attendance, accountability, we've got staff retention, again, bad attitudes just popping up, all the things that I think you just mentioned. Integrity is another.
Okay, this is great. Now, what I usually say at this part of the seminar is I say, and by the way, thank you for playing. Thank you for playing. That's great. And Yvonne, you're doing wonderful. What I usually say at this point is it takes years and years and years to get this right. It really does. Because you have to practice, practice, practice what we're going to talk about. So I want to make sure that everyone understands there's no magic bullet here. It's not a magic bullet. I'm not going to give you something that tomorrow will make your practice perfect. But I will talk about things that will allow you to start thinking, how do I do it? And at the very end of the seminar, I'm also going to have my email address up there. So if you want to email me or call me, I do coaching for free, so it's no big deal. And I'm happy to respond to you in any way once we get to the last slide. Okay, so we understand there's lots of challenges, and these challenges will impact us on a daily basis. And let's be fair. If I have an unhappy employee or an employee that's not trained or one that's not engaged or one that's not aligned, it's going to show up at the front desk. It's going to show up at the lab. It's going to show up as an assistant to the doctor. It's going to show up. And that's why we're talking about this. It's going to show up in the revenue, and it's going to show up in profit. Okay. Now, the first thing you have to think about is what type of management structure do you have in your organization? Most of us will be unfamiliar with the professional management in the United States. That means most of us didn't go get an MBA in management. It's not how we did it. We learned from our parents, learned from our previous boss, learned from a lot of different people. A couple of us may have taken some management courses. Several of us may have written, or rather read some books. But most of what happens in the United States today, most, is actually influenced by World War II. And if you ask the question, why, I'll give you the answer. Okay.
Why, David?
Thank you. That's great. Why? Because most people that came out of World War II, you know, the generals, the colonels, the captains that went on into the business world understood what's called the command and control environment. So the command and control environment means there's one person at the top commanding and controlling all the activities. And that same type of command and control hierarchy was also taught in most of our business schools right up to about 2000. The difference, that means most of us that are, you know, less than or greater than 40 years old, and oftentimes in management, this is the kind of management we learn, or maybe our fathers and mothers or grandfathers, grandmothers taught us this. This is command and control. It doesn't allow for any kind of participation. It's very authoritarian. It's top-down management. Employee satisfaction is not really at the core of it. Alignment, engagement is not at the core of it. It really focuses on corporate profit, and you're going to do it my way. Now, the challenge with that is that that's a very old school type of mentality. And where we are today is not in a command and control environment. That's not how people like to work. We know that because the surveys that come out will tell us that alignment and engagement is at an all-time low in our country when we come into business practices. So The average employee gives their employer a C+ for being an employer. On Gallup's latest research, we find that 70% of our employees come to work and they're not engaged. And what we've learned more recently about engagement is that engagement and alignment basically drives our business. So if we don't have employees that are engaged or aligned with our practice, and we can do it in many ways, by the way. It doesn't have to be my way. There are many ways to do it, which is, well, we'll talk about culture. But if we're not aligned or we're not engaged, we're not going to be good employees. So think about that. Do I have a command and control environment in my office, or am I doing more what's called sell and enroll? Am I engaging people in the process? Am I looking for feedback? Am I asking people to be part of it? That's the difference between telling somebody and selling somebody. Now, if engagement is the true meaning of success and we want people to love their job, there are many ways to do it. Of course, we can do like a lot of these new startup businesses. We could have free beer. We could have free coffee. We could have free fruit. But that's not really it. That isn't really creating the engagement. That's something nice, but it's not really creating engagement. So if I talk now about engagement generally, think about that. So I'm just going to ask you to go to Yvonne again. What would be an example of a fully engaged employee? What's an example of someone that's fully engaged in your practice? Just type it into Yvonne. Let's see if Yvonne can read off a couple that come in right now. And then we'll talk about non-engaged employees. I can give you a couple right there, a couple of my own examples, but that's the next thing we're going to ask. So Yvonne, anyone talk about engaged employees?
We don't have anyone playing yet. Here we go. Passion. Okay. Shows up on time. So
good
time management. Yes. Asking them to take part in decision making, whether it's frame lines or sales techniques. Another one, show up on time.
Absolutely. Now again, to be clear, go ahead, go Yvonne. One or two more you got?
Yeah, we got a few more. Happy to be at work, helpful, supportive, team player.
Understand, those are all good. I want to make sure that we understand about the show. I'm not judging anyone right now, by the way, because I'm a guy that shows up late 70% of the time. But I'm fully engaged, as everyone out there knows. If you know me, you know I'm engaged. Let's make sure that showing up on time is not the only thing we're looking at, because Yvonne gave a lot of other good examples. A disengaged person is one that thinks that they are above and beyond everyone else in the business. The business works for them. They don't work for the business. So you're in a meeting and they're checking their phone when you've asked them to put their phone down for 10 minutes. They're not engaged. There's somebody that doesn't read what you've asked them to read. It's somebody that thinks training is excess. They're not going to be culturally aligned. They're not going to be, and that's important, culturally aligned, and therefore they go down on their engagement. Once they go down their engagement, we have a term here at Clear Vision, they quit their job, but they're still receiving a paycheck. And you don't want that. You don't want somebody to quit their job and still show up, because that's the non-engaged employee. Okay, so we know what engagement looks like. And if we agree that we want cultural alignment, which means we are kind of in agreement of how things should work. Do we have to agree 100% of the time? I'd say no. But somebody has to understand what is important and what's not important. So at Clear Vision Optical, I ask people not to eat at their desks. Now, I have a reason for that. One time, a long time ago, we ended up putting some chicken bones in a box that was supposed to be sent to a customer. I didn't believe we did it, but we did. And once I saw that, I said, you know what? We're not going to have any eating in our distribution center because accidents can happen. But also at Clear Vision, we have to have a very egalitarian business philosophy. So it means in our desk jobs, I want people to have the same opportunity or lack of opportunity as in the DC. So I said, everyone, you can't be eating at your desks anymore. In the front, it became a little bit more, why can't I eat at my desk? I'm not going to put chicken bones in the back, in the box. I said, you're going to spill something on your desk. The person next to you is going to smell your Italian food, your Chinese food, your whatever. It's just not a good philosophy. And we have a great, big, giant, beautiful relaxation station where you can go and eat. I want you to take your break there. I don't want you to work through lunch. So that becomes part of our culture. Now, if somebody really can't get that, we got a big problem. because that's the smallest part of our business. We shouldn't be arguing about whether you should eat at your desk or not. That's not going to be part of it. So we want cultural alignment, and that's going to lead to a certain amount of engagement. If we get the organizational culture correct, a good culture, and we're going to line it up with people that we're going to hire for that culture, then everything works perfectly. Now, there's an example I like to give of two, let's say, boat yards. Where I live on Long Island, we have boat yards. All right. And one boat yard, everyone's honest. Everyone likes each other. There's no problems during the day, so forth and so on. And we have another boat yard where a lot of people are not organized, a lot of mistakes getting made during the day, people arguing and yelling at each other, so forth and so on. Do you understand? Two boat yards, they do the same thing, but two different cultures. Because remember, cultures are everything you do, not just what you write on the back of your mission statement or put up on your website. It's everything you do. It's how you greet people when they come in. It's how you keep the place neat and clean. If you've been ever at, Neil Galmart's out in, Indiana, when you walk in, you know exactly what the culture looks like. And he has everyone wearing same color shirt with the name of the practice on it. That's part of the culture. Mm-hmm. Now, if you take some people from one boat yard, say you took the best employees from one boat yard and you put them over at the other boat yard, they actually would not be culturally aligned. And that's the problem. What we want people in our practice to be is culturally aligned with our practice. I want to be clear. It doesn't mean you can't argue. It doesn't mean you can't debate. It doesn't mean you can't challenge. It doesn't mean you can't change ideas. But the basic roots of the tree, so to speak, not the branches and the leaves, but the roots of the tree, what really make that practice special, that's where you want people culturally aligned. And what's interesting is in the United States, most of the time, we're hiring for skills and not for culture. And in Europe, strangely enough, they hire for culture and we teach skills later. So keep in mind that skills can always be taught. Personality and culture, very, very difficult to teach. Very, very difficult.
So David, how do we align employees with the culture of the practice?
Okay, so this is a good question. Thanks a bunch. The challenge there is, and we're going to talk about this when we get to hiring. If I hire wrong, and this is very difficult, I'm going to get employees that are misaligned. So let's agree for a minute that 70 or 80% of what we can avoid is employees that we shouldn't be hiring to begin with. And I'll give a good example. So many years ago, I was asked to do the final round interview for a senior person in the organization that was making well into the six figures and had passed every single, and we'll talk about this, every single level of the interviewing. And at some point during the interviewing, I actually heard him speak very negatively of women. Now, this is strange, but he did. And our business is 70% senior management is women. So I realized something might be there. We took a break. I went out to the, what we call our break room. And I started talking to him casually, which is still part of the interview. I prompted him to say more about what he was talking about. And he came out with it. And I realized at that point, no matter what happened to the rest of the interview, he couldn't work here. So I'm going to find things about my culture that I don't want other people to abuse. Now, once they're in the culture, and we're going to talk about this, it's going to be about communication to correct that behavior, have that person understand it. Again, in our company, we actually will send people out, it's company paid for up to 8 different lessons if we find that they're having some problems with aligning. So for example, in this place, we talk about respect a lot. If people can't speak respectfully to others, we can actually usher them out to the employee assistance program, and they're going to be off premises, learning from somebody else how to speak to somebody else. Ultimately, if we don't hire right and we can't correct behavior, we have to exit the person who can't be aligned. But I want to be clear, it doesn't mean that they have to agree with everything that David says. It means they have to agree to the community. And to be fair, everyone understands it when I say it that way. You want to exit people from your community if they don't belong there. Okay? we can talk about giving respect and earning respect. So in this case, again, consider that if I'm disrespectful to others as a company president, that's not going to breed respect inside the organization. If I'm disrespectful to managers or employees, it, as they say in Italian, the fish rots from the head down. So, you know, if we don't have our leaders talking about respect, that's a problem. And that's one of the things you want inside your organization. Employees want respect. And that comes in many, many different ways. But part of it will be our language. Part of it will be our actions. You know, during holiday season, oftentimes we'll get gifts from our vendors. And we have a rule here that nobody can take a gift. So if they see a senior person walking home with a nice box of chocolate or a bottle of wine, that's disrespectful to the culture. So we're very clear about any gifts we get going to a company raffle, which are raffled off that at December. So keep in mind, in order to earn respect inside the organization, everyone has to give respect. And again, at the same time, we have to correct the behavior inside. Sometimes I do things wrong, and I'm really comfortable with anybody in the organization, even a newly hired person or an intern, telling me what I did wrong. And I'm very big on apologizing, but not apologizing for the sake of apologizing, because it's sincere, and that closes the loop. And that's what the respect loop is all about. If I disrespected somebody, it's very important it comes to my attention, and then I can correct that behavior on myself. And that's what you want inside the organization. We've had some problems sometimes with different employees doing things that are disrespectful, looking at someone else's private, say private materials, taking things that aren't theirs. Those people have to be exited from the organization immediately. It's zero tolerance for that. So, sorry, I saw myself raising a hand. I thought it was you.
No,
so
it's not me.
Respect is very, very important. Okay, so now the question is, what is your culture? And again, I would like, since this is somewhat anonymous, I believe, I don't have the chat box in front of me, but if you're going to say anything negative about your culture, just be careful that somebody who can see it, you may want to be careful on that. But if you want to put it into the chat box, how would employees describe your culture? You know, what would veterans tell rookie employees? What examples would employees use to demonstrate what your values look like? This is for you to do inside your company. This is the first exercise I'd want you to do. We do it here a lot at ClearVision, and Yvonne, it would be actually interesting for me to give it to you. We do, I forget what you call it, but basically the more the word is represented, the bigger the word gets on the infogram. And we have a lot of things, but one of the things here is fun. One of the things is respect. One of the words is compassion. So people can understand our culture very well by the way our employees describe our culture. And I think this is a very important exercise for everybody. Now, again, I can tell you honestly, because I've done this seminar enough, that some of you might work in challenged environments. Some of you might work in an environment where there's some change. Some of you might be working where there's some new employees that have upset the culture. So I can't say that everyone that's on the call has a great culture, but everyone can have a good culture. What I'd ask you to do in this case is figure out what are the words that would describe your culture. And what's interesting, the leadership should be pretty much involved in this, as well as the staff, and hopefully everyone's using the same words. It should be anonymous if you really want to get people's fair view. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. But that would give you an idea of where you think your culture is right now. Now, we've talked a lot about culture. We're about, halfway through, just about. And what we're going to start moving now to is hiring, communicating, and recognizing behavior. Ultimately, we'll talk about exiting. But now we've talked about culture. Again, keeping in mind that we could talk about this for 12 weeks if we were in a college course. So we're going to take it right down. So I'm just going to ask Yvonne again, does anyone have any questions about how culture shows up, what culture really is, alignment or engagement? Because we haven't talked about yet, how do we get the people into our practice? Or how do we work with people? We just really talked about why culture is important. And we talked about it from impacting revenue, impacting profit, impacting efficiency, all the things that would make for a great practice on the business side. We also didn't talk about it from let's just have all these nice perks in the organization. Because again, all the nice perks in the organization, like WeWork in the city. If ever you guys follow the WeWork story, it's very, very interesting. They were perk crazy. And the president of the organization was exited for sexual misconduct. And the next year, all of the senior staff was exited for financial misconduct. So the fact that they made it a fun place to work had nothing to do with the culture. The culture was party boy, frat boy, have a lot of fun at the expense of women. Number two, let's just enrich ourselves and screw around with our business before we go public. Once they found out, then obviously everything fell apart. But that's an example of where culture is not about nice things. It's about how you are treating people. So is there any questions so far, Yvonne, that we can look at?
Yeah. So, definitely we had a question on how you even find the right people to create your culture. But then, along those lines, as we're thinking about our new employees or hiring, should we have a list of expectations for each employee, or is it just better just to coach as you see things happen and evolve within the practice?
Okay, that's a great question, and that's going to lead me right into this slide, which is about hiring. So if we look in the middle, we're going to talk about culture, right? Right in the middle of the yellow, it says driven by leadership and values. So for me, we have a slide later, we'll talk about leadership, what the responsibilities are, but the values I kind of alluded to inside, in the last little bit of time. So at Clear Vision, we have certain values, and if you walked into our building, you walked in the front lobby, you'll see them listed there. So in addition to compassion, integrity, performance, service, innovation, you'll see fun. And actually, I was just walking down the hall where we have some artwork, and somebody put up a new value, which is interesting because I only had 7. I just listed 6. They put community. So somebody took it upon themselves in this company to change the value structure without telling the president. I thought that was pretty cool. So I took a picture of it. So we have to have our values first. And what we're going to interview on is those values. Think about that. I'm not only going to interview you on your can you work in the lab, can you dispense, and how good you are as a practicing OD, but I'm going to also start to understand your values. If your values don't align, that's going to be a reason for not going forward in our practice. So what's most important here is I can coach people, but it's much better to coach a team that wants to be coached and is already aligned than to try to make people aligned. And again, I'll give you an example of this. I coached college track and field, and this would be 35 years ago, 40 years ago. And I had a team that was really talented, but underperforming. And I made a lot of changes on the team, and there was 4 guys that I thought could be great. And that was going to be my relay team. So the first guy, I knew I had to win over the first guy because he was the real leader on the team. It took me about 3 weeks of really working hard to get him to come over to my side. But once he came over, the number 2 guy, who was looked up to him immensely, came over immediately. Then I had 2 guys left. One guy would never, ever, ever give me a break. That means no matter what I did as a coach, I was wrong. Now, imagine coaching a championship team where 25% of your team is always arguing with you, telling you you're wrong, you don't know how to coach, the other coach was better. It limits where the team can go. We still did well, but it limits where the team could go. So I want to eliminate that person as much as I can in my hiring process. So we'll talk about hiring, but the next thing we should be looking at is communication, informing and inspiring, which is part of the job of leadership. We get our engaged employees, because remember, we've hired right, we've got our engaged employees now, and now they're beginning to service our customers because they're happy. They're happy. When I travel around the country, oftentimes when I go into offices, a lot of times, no matter what day it is, somebody will greet me. Like today, they'll go, "Hey, Dave, you're from Clear Vision. It's a terrific Tuesday." Why? Because the last 15 years, everybody in our company answers the phone with "It's a marvelous Monday, terrific Tuesday, wonderful Wednesday," so forth and so on. And that means thousands of people have heard us be happy on the phone. That's what we want. We want happy employees, and then they can service our customers. Once that happens, productivity increases, we ultimately get our profit. So this is our virtuous circle today. Let's look at hiring. Well, actually, we can, I think I told Yvonne, I'd like you to read this one. So you can read it, and then we'll go into hiring.
Sure, I'd be happy to. It's important that the company be a family, that people feel that they're part of the company. When you treat people that way, you get better productivity. Rather than really caring what hours you worked, you care about the hours.
Now, this is exactly what you want in your organization. Now, again, I want to be clear. Everyone has to punch in. Everyone has to do their hours. But what Larry Page has described is really a great culture. And to be fair, Google is known for a lot of their innovative cultural initiatives, including dedicating almost 20% of the week for innovation and creativity for their staff. So the staff gets paid, but they basically get to work on projects they want to work on. Now, again, very difficult to do in an optometric practice. I've tried it here at Clear Vision. It's kind of tough too because of the nature of our business. There are a lot of software programmers, so it works for them. But imagine if you spent only 30 minutes every 2 weeks to ask your staff, what can we do to improve here? And if the owner, operator, or decision maker allowed for that to happen, and then took it seriously, and then reported back. What a great cultural initiative that makes. Okay, now let's talk about leadership, because if we go back to here, just want to make sure I'm show you where we're working. We're talking about informing and inspiring, and for me, that's leadership. Why I say that is right now, as a president of the company, I'm talking to you guys out there in television land, but everybody else here at Clear Vision is working. They don't need me as a manager to be over them to make sure that the packages are getting shipped or the phones are being answered or the checks are being deposited. And by the way, the same is true for their supervisors or their, in the hierarchy. And again, go back to command and control. Command and control would be, I don't trust people to do their job. But in the world of empowerment and trust, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, I trust that everything's getting done. So what's my job as a leader? Now, again, think about it. The leader isn't necessarily the person, only one person in the business. There may be 3 or 4 leaders. The job of a leader is threefold. One, they have to coach, guide, and mentor, as well as performance management people in the organization. Coach, guide, and mentor, as well as performance management. But if you don't do the first 3, you never get to performance manage. Number 2, they have to engage others in any kind of change. So for example, if we're going to install a new computer system, my leaders are going to be helping people with the change management. Because with the old computer system, I don't need, if GPN has that system right now, hey, iCare Pro is the system, everyone knows it, we use it. But it's when we make changes that my leaders are really important. And that's when leaders earn their money, right? Coaching, mentoring, guiding, and leading change. The last part is they have to communicate clearly and effectively on a regular basis throughout the organization. So if leaders are not communicating, all you're going to get is miscommunication. In our company, right now, we have about 200 different people. And I say different, meaning different. About 80 people are outside the building, 120 inside. The oldest person in the organization is past 70. I don't think we have anyone past 80 anymore, but past 70. We have a bunch there. And the youngest person is a college person. So we have 4 generations of people. We probably have people inside the building and outside that speak at least 15 different primary languages. So where do they come from? Culturally, they're born in different countries. And we have to communicate and inspire and lead 200 people. So how do we do that? And we're going to talk about that as well. But that's why leader communication is critical. And we have to be talking about vision, values, mission, strategy, tactics on a regular basis. Once a month, we talk about how Clear Vision's doing. Are we doing well? How's our profit? How's our sales? On a regular basis, I ask my employees, what are we looking for in employees? What are the 4 factors we look for in employees? Person has to say yes to everything. yes to everything. Can't start with a no. And when we're in a room, when somebody answers a question, they say no, everyone else starts laughing. They have to be positive. That means they have to say, today is a sunny day, even though I'm looking outside, it's quite cloudy and it was raining before, right? They have to be flexible, because in a business with 200 people, you have to be flexible. It can't just be your way all the time. And last, you have to be curious, because curious people actually find better ways to do things. And it's really interesting. We just changed 2 departments completely. And we had 2 or 3 new people come into one department. They'd never been there before. And the first thing they started saying is, why do we do it this way? Because they looked at it in a way that we were doing it very inefficiently. So that's what you want curious people for. So people that say yes, I'll talk about that in a second. People that are positive, their attitude, right? People that are flexible, how they deal with other people, and people that are curious. Now, yes, that usually gets people. David, why do you want people to say yes all the time? You've just told us about this great culture, which is not a yes culture. It's a challenging culture. Yes, that's true. But every sentence should start with a yes. And that changes completely what we have to do. So for example, Seth, I need to have this new software finished within a week. Now, let's agree Seth is no way for him to finish it. No way for him to finish it. So if he said, Dave, no way it could be done, how am I going to feel? I'll feel terrible. And then we'd have some little argument. If he said this, on the other hand, Dave, no problem. However, I'd like to discuss with you what else may not get done. Wow, what a difference. I got my yes, and he's going to tell me, now you have to make some decisions. You know, can I be there on a certain time for a certain day? If I said, no, my schedule's too busy, you're hearing non-participation. If I said, you know what, I can make it, let me think about what else I need to rearrange. It's a whole different mentality. So people inside the organization understand yes creates the environment we want. It's not a yes to everything, but even like I say, to our customers, if there's a frame on back order, can I get you the frame you want? If it doesn't exist in the world, of course the answer is no. And I'm sorry to disappoint you guys. I'm looking close. Sorry to disappoint you. But I can say this, Yvonne, I'm sorry that frame is on back order. However, I can get you a different size or a different color. It will be no charge, or I can get you a different frame, no charge, for your patient who needs to wear glasses. Or if you don't mind, I might be able to repair that temple if you send that frame into me. So I want to get to a yes. That's the most important part. Okay, the power of great. Let's talk about the employees that we want to hire. Now these are, according to the question that Yvonne had for me, how do we know who to hire? There's a process, but how do we know who to hire? So at Netflix, they're going to say they only hire A players. Now, to be fair, it's a great company. All right? Whether you use the product or not, it's a great company, great culture. What's an A player? Let's define it. Anyone who's in the top 15% of their field. And again, it's part culture, part skill. At Container Store, which has been voted one of the best companies to work for in the United States for the last 20 years, they have a saying. They say one average person is worth 3 lousy people. Think about that. One average, 3 lousy. One good person is worth 3 average. And one great person is worth 3 good people. My father taught me this lesson many, many years ago when he would say, David, I have a manager here that's worth 1.5 people. It doesn't mean that they worked 60 hours a week. It means that everything they did was 50% better than everyone else. I work with a person inside this company now. I tease her. She's still here. Some of you guys might know her, Karen. When I would give Karen an entire day's worth of work, big pile of work, I put it on her desk at 8:30 in the morning. She'd come to me at 11:30 and say, Dave, what else do you have me to do? And I'd always call her, a witch, because she could wiggle her nose and get the work done. But that's the kind of people you want in your business. You want people with a great attitude, can get the work done, and as we say here at Clear Vision, make your life easy. If your life is easy, doesn't mean that you're not working, doesn't mean that someone's a slave to you. It means whatever they're supposed to do within reason, they're getting it done on time, getting it done accurately, not asking you to look it over, not asking you to proofread it, not asking. Can you imagine if you had a doctor that every time the doctor did an exam, another doctor had to go in and check? And if we paid that guy real doctor wages, we'd be well overpaying. So think about what I said about the Container Store. One lousy doctor kills us. Sorry, docs out there. If you're any docs listening, didn't mean to pick on you guys. Optician's the same. If you can't edge, you can't run that Santinelli machine, we got a problem. Okay, so we understand that what we're looking for is high performance employees, and at the same time, remember, our competition is not only other optical places, not the chains. It's when you have 3.5% unemployment in the country, you're competing against everyone for every opportunity. So think about it from that way. Other than a doctor who needs a license or a license state for opticians, basically everyone you're hiring can work some other place. Okay, the process for hiring. Let's take this in about 5 minutes. I see what my time is looking like. Yvonne, running a little bit late, but I'll make sure we'll get it done.
You're doing great.
With process for hiring and competency and culture. So again, remember, we now have a standard that we're going to look at. And again, Yvonne, if you remind me, you take a note, I'll send everyone a template on how we should hire. What we look for is to hire the top quarter. It won't be only the top 15%, but the top quarter of people that match us in values and have reasonable skills. Because remember, we can teach skills. We can get a great optician. We can get a great doctor, but we want the person who is aligned and culturally engaged with our practice. So I'll send you that form, template for hiring. It's a very, very good one. And everyone can put their own words in. We're looking for values and skills, and we're looking for the top quarter to hire. Okay, so what do we do for hiring? Number one, at the top there, it says ABR. Always be recruiting. Whenever you see somebody that you like, let them know that while you don't have a spot open in the business right now, you would like them to consider working at the company. I got a call last Thursday for a guy that I knew 31 years. And he said to me, Dave, you remember the first time we spoke? I did. And he said, remember what you said to me? I did not. But he said, you told me then and there, 31 years ago, that one day we'd be working together. And Dave, right now, I'd like to leave my company and come to work with you. I couldn't believe it. So that means at some point I was recruiting back then, but it did take 31 years. And to be fair, we have a lot of people in the company that we've recruited over years. Always be recruiting. Cast a wide net. Look for transferable skills. Now, I get the resume in, because we're going to go quick on this one. I'm getting a resume. The resume is to screen. The resume is not to hire. So I'm going to look at that resume. I'm going to see what they do. If I'm working in Southern California and I need someone to speak Spanish, it should be on the resume. If they should speak Spanish and Filipino, it should be on the resume. Whatever is required, whatever the minimum is, that's what I need to have. I'm also looking for any way to give me a hint on their culture. What are they involved in? What are the hobbies they're involved in? How long have they worked someplace? The skill in looking at a resume cannot be understated. At the same time, I want to screen people. The screen is not for Yvonne to call me up and let me tell her about my business. I say, Yvonne, you want to learn about a business? Go to our website. We're the best company to work for. We have a lot of people up there that make comments. You can look at us on Glassdoor. That's how you learn about us. I want to talk about you today. And that screen can be anywhere between, it's a phone screen. It could be 15 to 30 minutes. But I want to narrow down my resumes before I start screening. Now, when it gets to interviewing, I'm going to have a list of questions that every single candidate will be asked the same question. So I don't go in there and wing it. I don't take their resume and circle 12 things. Every single candidate gets the same questions. And the reason we do that is because we want to be able to compare candidate to candidate to candidate to candidate. So in our interviewing process, which is what I'm going to recommend for you, which is multiple team members in multiple interviews. Think about it. If I'm going to be a scribe for a doctor, I do not want the person at the front desk, no matter how good he or she is, to hire, because the doctor is going to have to get along with that person. So at some point, the doctor is going to have to interview. If the doctor says, I don't have the time, I'm sorry, this is your scribe. You're going to have to put in some time here. Now, at the front end, I can also have my front office person do some of that work because he or she understands our culture probably as much or better than anyone else. So in small practices, let's say less than 10, I got to figure out my interviewing, who's the group. But here at Clear Vision, we have 3 people on our culture committee. All they do is interview for culture. And if that passes, we then get to, let's talk about their skills. And if we come up with skills that are short, we say to ourselves, what's the gap? And how do we then teach that person the skills that we want, okay? We believe in professional assessment profiles, which I don't have any that are available right now to me for the eye care side, but we use some that are used for businesses. I know there's several that exist out there for eye care, and I'm sure if you Google it right now, you'll be able to find a good professional assessment profile. What they do is just kind of tell you a little bit more about the person culturally, a little bit about their personality. You might have heard about DISC, D-I-S-C. What kind of person am I? Am I an introvert, extrovert, so forth and so on. References and background checks, critical. Believe it or not, this is crazy. When we get down to the hiring part, and I ask Yvonne to give me her references, and she says, Dave, you can call these 4 people. No kidding, everyone. 2 out of 10 people that I'm ready to hire will give me references that sync them. 2 out of 10 people that I'm ready to hire will offer me references, and when we do a real reference check, we find out there's something wrong. So reference checks are critical. Believe it or not, most people don't do a good job. I've got to get a good reference check. And again, Yvonne, if you ask us for any of these materials, I'll be happy to send it to you, and you can send it off to the team. Testing skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why would I want an optician that can't run a Santinelli edger if I have a Santinelli edger? So I'm going to ask them to come in and do some jobs. Why would I have a doctor that is really skilled at doing everything right, but in our practice, you know, the chairside manner is critical as well as the handoff. I want to see them do that, so I'm going to ask them to come in for a day. And by the way, whether it's paid or non-paid, either of these things, part of the interview. And that's what we do here at Clear Vision. If it's a salesperson, I take that person on a ride along. They ride with our salespeople to see what it looks like. And again, a trial period. If after 30 days things don't work out, I want to have the ability to exit you. At Whole Foods, they do, this is pretty much a Whole Foods way of looking at interviewing. At the end of a month, the Whole Foods interviewing team, which is, you know, in each location, has to vote on the person they just hired. If 2 out of 3 people don't want that person to stay after 30 days, they exit. Can you imagine that? You have to have close to 70% of the people there in the building that are part of that interviewing process have to say yes to Yvonne or David. And again, the last part was don't settle. The Ritz-Carlton, which is a great organization, had an open spot down in Florida for a bakery chef. And you would think it's pretty easy to get a bakery chef. But the Ritz-Carlton is culture-centric business. So how long did it take them to get a bakery chef? 8 months. That's right, 8 months. Don't settle even.
Hey, David.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Dave. So a couple of thoughts have come through, and you used the word cultural committee. So can you define that a little bit more, and then can you give a little bit more information on your cultural committee?
Okay, so I'm going to do this because I'm looking at the time. We have about 10 minutes left. You said don't run over, leave some time for questions, but the questions are coming in, so I'm going to run right to the end. So this is good. This is perfect. Okay, for a culture committee, we're going to have people. So like I said, we have 3 people here. And by the way, it's not any 3 people that don't have anything to do that day. It's 3 people. We probably have a team of 5, but it's 3 people that will sit down with a candidate for 1 hour and find out if that candidate will be aligned or cause problems with us. I'll give you a great example of someone's going to cause problems. So I interviewed a person years ago, and all they could do during the course of the interview, all they could do is tell me how uncomfortable the chair was, tell me something about it's too hot or too cold, look at their cell phone, etc. This is how they're going to act at Clear Vision. So it's not that I want you to always think it's the right temperature, but you have to at least be part of the interview process. Whereas Jennifer Trachtenberg, the head of our talent group, says, if a person shows up like that, believe them, they're showing up. So we have to have, what are we looking for? I'll talk about our talent group, but what are we looking for in that interview is, will this person fit in? And I want to be clear, they do not have to agree with us. It's not about, are you a Republican? Are you a Democrat? Are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Are you tall? Are you short? No. Diversity is what you're looking for, because diversity actually drives performance as well. But alignment is where we need to be. Alignment in the culture of the organization. And that's what that first interview is. Now, our particular group, it has to be someone who's really interested in hiring. So the last person you want to, and by the way, I have 1, I have two really good people that are introverts on this committee. And they would tell me, I'm not really good at this, David. I'd say, no, you're excellent at it because you know people that are jerks. They have a really great jerk meter. And that means if they interview somebody and they walk out and they say, this person did this, they're sunk. So for us, that's the first interview. I hope that answered the question because, again, I can go on at length, but I hope that answered the question. After we were to hire somebody, most people quit there. Most people quit. The employer quits. By the way, hi, Yvonne, here's your package. Here's your healthcare plan. Here's your pay stub. Here's your this. Have a nice week. So for a salesperson at ClearVision, we've developed a 26-week training period where there's a check-in each week by your regional sales manager, by a trainer once a month, and by our sales support group once a week. And it's very specific and written. So everything we want that person to learn in week 1 or week 2 or week 3. And the same is true for an accountant, and the same is true for a distribution person. I know I don't like to bring up Warby Parker because some of you guys will say, Dave, Warby Parker's the enemy, but they're not. We can learn from them. Warby Parker will put every employee in the business in customer service for 3 weeks before they do anything. So they have them on the phone and with the computer so they understand the business, they understand the culture, they understand the customer. I myself take 1 hour a month phone calls for all my employees, phone calls for all my customers. I answer about 15 calls a month, so it's not a lot, but for 1 hour I sit down and engage. This is part of onboarding. So it begins with the interview process. Are you on board? Are you the right person for us? If you're not the right person, onboarding will be a disaster. Part of onboarding, I checked with one of our new sales reps today, and he said, David, I'm having a problem. You want to find that out before the end of the month. So onboarding is a careful grooming of that person on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, quarter-to-quarter basis until they're totally absorbed into your organization. We have to consider onboarding forever because sometimes people fall off board. What happens if the employee is having some troubles at home? What happens if the employee is challenged somewhere at work? I want to find that out before that good employee turns into a non-performing, non-engaged, non-aligned employee. Communication breeds culture. So again, I'm going to move quick, maybe 10 minutes we have left. All different kinds of communication. I talked to you before about the diversity here at ClearVision Optical. One of the things that we have to communicate with is different methods of communication. So for example, if it's written, it can be an email, it can be a text, it can be a memo. If it's somehow an audio, it could be a phone or a voicemail, or like we're doing now, it can be a video. It could be conference calls. It could be a lot of different ways. And I have to choose, and you have to choose, the right way to communicate. And what I tell everybody in the company is communication is not like casting a fishing rod without reeling it in. So at ClearVision, just think about this one thing. One more thing I'm going to ask you to think about. If you've ever had miscommunication in your organization, consider whose fault it is, who's responsible. Almost always you're going to say it's the other person. At ClearVision, I never, ever, ever allow a good communicator to say it's the other person. I say we communicated wrong. We communicated wrong. Let's figure out how the other person best learns and best hears. And that's how we should communicate to them. Because most of us only communicate when it's easy for us. I don't want to do it for easy for us. I want to make it easy for the other person. And at ClearVision, we're going to test, did you understand what we were talking about if it's very serious, right? That has to be classic communication. You're making a change in your healthcare plan, you can't just hand people out a card and say, use it. You have to go through how this plan is different, and each employee deserves the respect of having their questions answered. So consider communication is the responsibility of the communicating party. And if it's confusing to anyone, it's the communicating party that needs to be able to have that communication. That's one of the most important parts of leadership. Okay, trust and empowerment. So think about what we've done. I'm going to walk you through it. We've got our culture. We've got our values. We know what our company's like. We have some written down information about how we're going to interview and hire. We have an interviewing format. We have our interviewing team. We've got the right person. We're keeping them on board. This is the last part. I'm going to trust and empower people to do it right. The same way I said, I walked down a hall really just about an hour ago and saw somebody put up a new painting really of an 8th value in the company. That's called empowerment to 100% degree. Nobody asked the president. Empowerment is Pauline Graziano, who 15 years ago, I stopped by and I said, Pauline, why are you giving away free shipping to this customer? Because, you know, in the command and control world, she's not empowered. She said, David, I felt we made a mistake. I told them this was going to be shipped for free. And in fact, I gave them the frame for free. Now, here's a person that has the easiest job, when I say easiest, sorry, I shouldn't say that, has an entry-level job in the company, but they decided they were going to treat the customer as the customer should be treated, not by the policy of Clear Vision. I have the Ritz-Carlton up here because the Ritz-Carlton will allow any employee in their building to make up to a $2,000 decision to make something right for a customer. And to be fair, I actually was at a convention where this happened. A person who was on the cleaning staff changed my room without me having to go downstairs to the front desk because I felt it wasn't the right room. They said, no problem. They didn't ask how much I paid. Was I on a special? They know that room is expensive. They were able to move me. So we want to empower people. We want to create an environment of trust where if you make a mistake, it doesn't matter. Mistakes should be celebrated as learning experiences. If you make too many mistakes, you got a little different problem. But trust and empowerment is now when we have this great employee. Now, you have this great employee. We're going to recognize, reward, and celebrate. Recognize, at Clear Vision, every employee can recognize another employee with a hashtag kudos email. Every time we do that, once a month we get together for our family meetings, right, which is every employee in the company putting down their work, getting together for 1 hour and listening to other employees talk, very structured family meeting. But those kudos are read at the end of the day. We do about 70 to 100 kudos a month. 2 are selected, and then they are read in front of everyone else to show the kind of behavior we want. So it's employees recognizing the employees. Leaders in the organization recognize their staff on a weekly basis. The sales leaders in the company, the regional sales managers, are recognizing sales performance, and others recognize other performance. Rewarding, when we do things right, we give out small gifts here in the company. So one of the things that's really popular that started a couple of years ago is called a 2-hour pass. I noticed that a lot of the working parents, moms and dads, had to take off a whole day or a half a day in order to do something like go to the school, see the kid do something, take the kid to the dentist, meet the oil and gas man or some other contractor at home. And I came into the talent group, which is the people that run our culture, and I said, why don't we just give out people these extra passes? How does it work, Dave? I'll give everyone start with 4, and that means you have 4 different things you want to do during the year. It's like an extra day off, but it's 2 hours. And you want to come in late, you want to leave early, you want to tack it onto your lunch, doesn't matter. No permission needed at all. The only thing I ask people to do is don't bang them up on Fridays and don't combine them. Use them what they're used for. So we can reward people now with 2-hour passes. We can reward people with $50 gift cards. We can recognize and reward and celebrate. So one of the things that we like to do is celebrate a lot. Twice a year, we get the whole group together, separate from our family meeting, and celebrate the successes we had and the people that we have. And we call that a superhero day. Everybody gets to wear a superhero costume, put on a little mask, a little cape, a little crown. We have a lot of fun. We have a party. We're celebrating the success. That's what's very, very important here. Recognize, reward, and celebrate. Find people doing things right. Okay, we're just at the end. So we got there a little bit, maybe not the way that you and I thought, Yvonne, but we got there and we had a lot of questions on our participation. So here's what I'd like you guys to do. And I'll put this one up and we'll talk about it for a minute or two. Consider the core values unique to your company. Does the existing culture in your office reflect the values? If they're not, there's not an alignment. can the job descriptions, which we didn't talk about too much, but I'll get there in a minute, and the hiring be more reflective of our culture. For a job description, you should be talking about what you want the person to achieve. So if I'm a doctor, I just don't want to say doctor. I want to say able to perform 16 comprehensive exams per hour without a scribe or with a scribe or whatever else I want that person to do. If it's an optician, this is what I want them to be able to do. If it's a front office person, so forth and so on. So the job description should not be general. It should be almost specific. So at the end of the year, if you created that person, you could say, oh, you did all of these things well. Do you have a communication strategy? Is your team inspired? Many people, when I go into practices and I try to find out what's going on there, I do find out that communication is one of the biggest challenges. That's for sure one of the biggest challenges. Team meetings, I talked about our family meeting. You have to have frequency. You can't have it once a year. You have to share how actions fit in and don't fit in. That's part of your culture. And you have to be required to give ongoing feedback at any of these types of meetings. You want feedback as much as you can. At Clear Vision Optical, we do 2 outside surveys every year and 1 inside survey called the Living Room Chat. Why is it called the Living Room Chat? It's a lot less formal than the first 2, which are actually objective, done by outside groups. What you're looking for is where you fail on the survey, where you fail, and what you can improve next year. And when we get back our surveys, when we learn something's not going well, even if it's better than average for the survey, that's what we work on hard throughout the year. We want to create rewards that support our core values. We talked about that. Assess current staff and identify areas for training. We didn't talk about that as much. So that would be part of performance management, which means I will speak with our talent group, which is 4 people in the group, on a regular basis, assessing talent, understanding where the training needs are, and then training and committing dollars to training. And, or as I said to you, correcting some of the performance behavior if the people aren't really on board. We want to select partners that reinforce our values. Oftentimes I hear offices talk about, I'm forced to do business with so-and-so. Let me tell you right now, you're not forced to do business with anyone. The main reason that your business is successful is because of you, the culture you have, and what you provide the community. You're not forced to do business with anyone. And if you don't want to do business with somebody because they're not aligned with how you do your business, then I would suggest you stop doing business there. And then ultimately develop an exit strategy for misalignment. Many places call that a performance improvement plan, a PIP, PIP. And really the way that works is once we determine that Yvonne is not right for us, one way or the other, or if she's having some problems, we have to talk with her. And we do that with our talent manager as well as our manager, and everything is factual. We do not get into, we think you did this. Yvonne, during the last month, you've showed up 17 times late. This has impacted the team in a certain way. After that, I don't care. I don't care anything. You also don't call us when you're late. I don't care about any excuses about your cell phone. I don't care. These are facts. Yvonne, being on time here at Clear Vision is very important because, so forth and so on. Now we have a couple of choices and we lay it out. We can help you. We can change your hours perhaps if that's the issue. We can do this, but once we agree to this performance improvement plan, I have to have you on board. And that's how we started. Now again, if the person fails, I'm starting to document their failure with something they've agreed to, and then ultimately they can be exited out of the organization, and especially in a professional and legal way. And I'm happy to say this to everybody out there. We're in business 70 years. I've never been sued by an employee. So that means even people that get exited here would say, you've done a great job. Now, I'm at 3:05. I failed to get you to 3 o'clock. Yvonne, you have to tell me where we go from now, but I'm happy to stay if you want.
Yeah, so just a couple of quick things, David. So there was a request for your onboarding template.
Okay.
So if you're happy to share that, we'll get that to the person that requested that. Another question which tied into the very tail end of this particular slide where you talked about the performance plan. One of the questions that came in earlier is how do you get your long-term employee engaged when they're resistant to either change or either additional responsibilities?
Okay, so that's great. So that's really a great question. I'm going to think of a couple of people here in the business that are in the same situation, and I'll tell you how we handled it. But let's agree for a minute that the person's culturally aligned. Let's do that. And let's agree for a minute that there's no issues with them otherwise. That means what we're talking about is the performance side of their business, not the culture or personality side. If we agree to that, then we can go forward. Okay, so Yvonne, you've been here 20 years here at Clear Vision, and you've had numerous roles here. The last role you've been working on is our inventory position. You've been doing a really, really great job. Let's agree now, you're 58 years old. You started here when you were 38. So what do you like about inventory? Let's go through that one. What is it you don't like about inventory? Let's go through that one. Would you consider another opportunity inside the company? Yes, I'd like to be a doctor. Well, that's not going to happen. Let's be fair. It's not going to happen. Not because it's not going to happen, but it's another 8 years of school. So let's look at something else. I'd like to be a frame buyer. Great. Now you can understand what I'm doing now. I'm starting to engage the person in part of what they want to do. It doesn't mean I'm going to say yes, but I'm starting to have that conversation. So I want to know, are you bored? Are you not bored? Is there a problem with your manager? That's how ultimately all this is going to come out. So I don't ask that long-term employee what they like about our business, what they want to do, how they can add something where they can participate. And if I don't judge them for what they're really good at, then I have them in the wrong job. Because oftentimes we could say we have the right person, but they're in the wrong job. Or we have the wrong person and they're in a particular job. I want to exit them. I think you also have to be willing to exit long-term employees. We actually had 2 people that we talked to recently in our company that were here for at least 15 years. They weren't doing a great job in where we had them. They had risen to their level of, Peter Principle level of incompetence. And we did what we just talked about. And we gave one person a choice. We said, if we'd like you to be here. This is the job we'd like you to have. If that isn't for you, we understand and we'll create a severance agreement between the 2 parties. But I can't let you stay in this other spot anymore. So I think part of us don't run our businesses, and by the way, I'm guilty too, so I want to make sure that everyone understands. I've made every mistake that I'm talking about. I've made many times. But we have to run our businesses just like they are, a business. And if we see something's wrong, we have to give the person an opportunity to correct themselves through the performance improvement plan. But ultimately, if they're not working out, we have to, like I said, we have to either exit them or put them in a different spot in the company. So I don't know if that answers exactly the long-term employee, but it is a challenge with the long-term employee with change, because we have to change. We have to change. We have to. And that's, by the way, that's actually part of your culture. That's actually part of your culture as well. Change management.
Yeah. Yeah, David, great wrap up in all of that. Just want to thank you so much for sharing such unique insights on practice culture with all of our attendees. To loop back to the very beginning where we played a game, we definitely have 2 clear players, Mark and Corinne, who really did fire off a lot of questions and some comments throughout the presentation. So we will loop you with their email contact information so we can get them apprised.
Perfect. Perfect.
With that being said, thank you again, David. We could talk for hours and hours and hours just on this particular topic. I just want to remind everyone to tune in again tomorrow for another session on building blocks of business culture. And we'll have Dave Brown, who's the president and CEO of IDOC. And again, thank you everybody for taking the time to be with us today. Really looking forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you guys then. David, thanks so much.
Oh, one thing, Yvonne, real quick.
Yes.
I forgot to do this.
Yes.
I forgot to do this. If anybody wants to get a hold of me, I apologize. There's my email, dfriedfeld@cvoptical.com. Facebook is Clear Vision Optical. LinkedIn. By the way, I answer all my own stuff. I don't have an assistant that answers for me. Right? Is that right, Jen?
I do not.
Twitter is Optical Buddy. Instagram, Optical Buddy. My family's on Instagram, Twitter, a little bit of business, a little bit of politics. LinkedIn, all business. Email, any questions you have that I didn't address or Yvonne didn't ask, catch get a hold of me. Pinterest, you'll see my artsy fartsy side. Take care, everyone. Thanks for playing with me today.
Bye, David. Thank you so much.